it is hard to believe it's already been 10 years since the release of Captain America: First Avenger. At the same time, though, like just given your seismic contributions to the MCU overall, it feels like you guys have actually been in this world so much longer, like at least since, World War II, since like,
you seem older, Chris.
The golden age of Howard Stark. Yes. It feels longer than 10 years. Yes. I'm saying because of all you've contributed.
You look so terrible.
I look pretty bad then too. So
that's right. Yeah, we've seen like they'll do on Disney Plus. They'll have little interviews with us from back then, and I have that sweater. I don't have that hair. It's a little time.
I was single without a child then, so I imagine there's some mileage on me for totally non-Marvel related reasons.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to the beginning. I mean, I know you guys are not actually related, but like I've only known you together, so I picture you guys. You come out of the womb together. You eventually write a Peter Sellers biopic. Then you kill me, very underrated indie about a Polish mobster in Buffalo, which of course I appreciated a lot. Buffalo. Then you move into big budget studio fare with Chronicles of Narnia trilogy. How did you guys first come into the Marvel fold? Like how did that start at the very, very beginning?
The very, very beginning. Well, it started with a theoretical conversation before Marvel was even making movies, where we said, wouldn't it be neat to make a comic book movie starring a superhero at the time when they were actually created? So like Batman's from the 30s, I guess. And they're created with different demands on them. Batman is scaring gangsters in old-fashioned cars, and in a way, he almost makes more sense in that context. And so when we heard they wanted to make Cap, period,
right,
it kind of fulfilled the theory, because Cap's the perfect person to test out that theory, because he doesn't make a ton of sense in present day unless you start him back then.
And that happens, I want to say maybe June of 2008, because in probably May of 2008, a movie called Iron Man had come out and done gangbusters. And then Marvel said, all right, or had told the town that we're going to make Iron Man 2, we're going to make Thor, we're going to make Cap, and then we're going to make the Avengers. And so, our agents said, hey, they're going to make a period Cap movie. Are you interested? And as Chris said, that rang a bell for us. We had already been thinking about. So we then chased Cap all year, basically. You'd have to talk to Kevin whether or not we were on their radar at all, but we put ourselves on their radar and then just kept meeting with them and hounding them until they gave us the job, like really late that year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, looking back, what do you think it was? Obviously you had a vision, but like what specifically, if you can think back to that period, like what do you think, sold it for you guys? And also did you hit it off with Kevin Feige sort of right, right
probably I still hate the man.
Say, Chris.
I said I still hate the man. No.
Well, I was going to say it's the same, right? Like part of it is, why did we get the job? Partly because we hit it off with everybody, and we showed a willingness to kind of keep coming back and trying new things and working together.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it, and it had, in a way, I don't know whether Kevin and Stephen Broussard, who we were meeting with, were doing this on purpose, but it really did sort of demo out the Marvel process, which is they kept having us back. We kept altering things based on what they said, and we'd sit in the room and talk about it. And eventually we sort of all formed a take. And that has stood true for the whole time, is that it was a very collaborative process. It wasn't going, this is our take on Captain America. If you don't like it, we got to go. So it really was collaborative from even before we officially had the job.
And remember, like, these are early days for that studio. right? Like there's 6 people in the whole building. Like they're above a car dealership. They're not the Marvel we think of now.
They're not Disney. They're all the movies are being distributed by different studios. Still, it was a different operation.
It wasn't the glamour job that it sort of turned into.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Nascent stage. I mean, so that was you guys basically came on right after Iron Man hit. Was it pretty evident at that time that Feige was sort of this master plan guy, that he was envisioning phase after phase and in these ultimate sort of super ensembles that would come?
No, we sort of thought we heard, when we heard he was going to do the Avengers, we kind of said, "Oh, good luck to you." That, I'm sure that'll work out. But no, he's like, it's that his specialness has became clearer later. It's not to, it's like I remember being struck by, this guy's so young, and he's in charge of the studio. That's so crazy. But the more you spend time with him, you realize, oh yes, however it happened, the right guy got the keys to the car. You know what I mean? Like, he really knows where this thing is going.
Did you guys look back at all in terms of what they did with the 1990 version, even if it was just to look at not what to do?
Oh, have you seen it, Chris? I've never seen the whole thing.
No, I had the opportunity to watch it, and it felt best not to, because it's easy to see Cap as cheesy, and if you see a cheesy version of him, it gets hard to shake that out of your head. And he had to be cool to us, so I thought it best to not. It's also such a radically different take, if I remember correctly.
Italian Red Skull, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I want to feel like part of it's present day, or it's all present day.
Okay, it might come in.
It was a blend. I think it was a blend. I mean, yeah, not great, but at the very least, we can all agree it was ahead of its time, meaning that it came out 21 years before.
It was technically
yes. It was also very pro environment, from what I remember.
Was it really?
It had good messages. Are you guys present for any of the infamous Cap auditions? I mean, did you see anybody else? Like, did you see John Krasinski or Wyatt Russell go out for the part?
I think we saw Sebastian Stan go up for it. I remember that. Yeah.
I remember. I mean, they didn't have a Cap for a long time, so we were drafts. They had a production office
with various pictures of other actors wearing, like, because they would do sketches, of the costumes, and sometimes they'll just pick an actor and put him in the costume, and maybe it's a wish fulfillment thing or something. So I remember a lot of Jake Gyllenhaal as Cap costume pictures.
What did Sebastian's Cap look like?
Well, he carried some of what he carried into Bucky, which then carried into Winter Soldier, which is he has a darkness to him. He had a sort of like, that's a more troubled Steve Rogers than I was counting on. But we do have a guy could be troubled right over there. And his troubledness has paid off in spades.
Yes, I would say so. Tell us about the first time you met Chris Evans.
Boy, probably not that memorable. I think it was, sitting in some production office and sort of just hearing him out about stuff. I think he probably had already said yes, and so it was sort of early days of listening to an actor give us notes. And, as we got to know Chris more, we recognized he was also, remember back in the day, he'll say this, he was super reluctant to take that part. Right. He's notoriously like, in success, my life is going to be ruined. If I fail, it's going to be ruined. Like, it's a big movie star part. And so, I think my guess is that, and I just don't remember chapter and verse of what he said in that room, but he got much more comfortable with the character later. His notes were very on point later. He got very good at understanding that character. And for all of us, those early days were like, we're trying to figure it out. I don't have a specific on that.
I assume you had a script in place at that point when he came on. I mean, how did he influence or sort of reshape it in any way? Did he? I mean, you're no longer writing for, the cinematic version of the comic book Cap we always pictured, but now you're writing for a very specific actor, this guy from Massachusetts who he'd been the Human Torch. He had a certain persona already.
Yeah. I do think he was very conscious of not wanting snark. Like he understood that this has to be it can't be the Human Torch, who was very, sassy in 90s and, quippy, but also that, it was a very good understanding of Captain America, which is that, like, if this guy is going to fly as a character and as an authority figure eventually, he's got to have the gravity sort of right away, no matter what the situation is. Right. Which is what we all came to realize, is that, Steve Rogers was born Captain America. He just didn't have the body for it. And Evans got that. And it was like, I don't want, I think he may have taken a joke or two out, is what I remember.
I think that you're right. He was more conscious of, because of his resume, was probably more conscious that he had to overcome being a smartass in the other movies he's been a smartass in. That said, for me, he's eminently likable on screen. Like he's a very likable actor. And so that was really reassuring, that even though I know he wasn't going to be playing the Human Torch and being that kind of guy, he was going to draw me in and make me like him. And so then when he withholds things from me, when he withholds jokes from me, because he's not that character, I find myself leaning in to his performance.
I need to know how you described Steve in those early scenes. I mean, he's just so adorably tiny. He's so adorably tiny.
We can imagine anything. It's we just called him a 90-pound scrawny man.
I'm trying to look it up on the computer.
The question was, how the hell are you going to pull this off? The memory of Skinny Steve that I have is Leander.
Leander, yeah, his body double.
Was the actor who actually played. I mean, in the finished product, he plays Skinny Steve's body.
Depending on the shot, yeah.
Yeah, but he played Cap in a lot of, he played Steve Rogers in a lot of scenes, and he's very good. And you're like, it's a little jarring to be watching this and going like, you're going to replace his head? Is that gonna look in any way good? Look great.
Yeah, I mean, how was that executed on set? I've read a little bit about it over the years, but like, I gotta imagine Chris is, you have the body double doing scenes, and then you have Chris doing the same scenes over.
The deal was, and Chris was pretty adamant about this, if I remember correctly. Like he wanted to physicalize it as often as he could, like really every scene. I don't want to just come in and you just shoot my head. So that they ended up doing a lot. Like, I think they thought they were going to do just a lot of head replacement, and that was sort of the de facto, method. But I think they ended up taking Chris and shrinking his entire body down in many scenes, which is tougher, more laborious. So head replacement worked a little better on something like the Rebirth Pod. He's lying flat. There's no movement from the head down. You could probably get away with it there. But if he's moving, I think it's harder to make that look not awful. And so I think they went with a sort of all over Evans performance and just shrunk.
But also wonderfully, at times they defaulted to good old fashioned Chris crouch down a little and we'll put a really baggy outfit on you. I think the scene, I want to say the scene where Peggy is reviewing the line of troops, and she eventually punches a guy out. That's just Evans being small with the baggy outfit.
I think he's kneeling on a riser or something.
It's possible.
The muscle bound stuff, that was pure Evans though, from what I understand.
Yeah, no, there's no.
Sadly, not CG at all.
No, he pretty much looked like that. It was ridiculous.
Bastard.
Bucky, meanwhile, I mean, basically, a glorified sidekick at this point. Let's be honest. Maybe not even that glorified in this film. But I know Sebastian Stan. He was multi-contract, right? So, like, how did you envision his future? Like, were there plans in place for him at that point to ultimately become as essential to the MCU as he would?
Again, remember, this is Marvel where there are no guarantees, right? Where even we are going, really, you're going to make the Avengers? I don't know if that's going to work out. So the idea that, well, we locked him up for 9 movies because we absolutely knew, I think Sebastian Stan was at a level of acting where you could lock him up for 9 movies. And it's not like he had, he was early in his career, right?
And so, I would think, if anything, at that point, the idea was like, well, in success, you could make a flashback World War II movie and then Bucky'd be back again.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But Chris and I knew that he was a haunted sort of actor that could play a Winter Soldier, but we did not assume that there was a Captain America 2, And again, that movie didn't make so much money that it was a slam dunk at all.
Sebastian, he did, and it's not so much I don't remember indicating it too much in the script, but post the rescue and being brought back, he's very haunted, like a vet would be, like someone who's been in a prison camp would be. And it's fascinating when you think about the fact later on that we say that Zola may have experimented on it, but it's also this great contrast to eager beager Steve, who isn't having, it's not taking the toll on Steve that it's taken on regular guys.
Mm-hmm.
And to put the two of them against each other is really interesting.
Feige is such a visionary. I wouldn't have been the least bit surprised if you guys were like, he said to you, like, guys, there will be a point where Disney buys Marvel and then launches a multi-billion streaming service, and it's going to be called Disney Plus, and Bucky will be the co-lead of one of their biggest original shows in their first year.
I remember sitting in a meeting where we're trying to crack, I think we were trying to crack Winter Soldier, early talks about Winter Soldier, and I read on my phone that Disney had bought Marvel, and I went, did Disney really buy Marvel? And they're like, oh yeah. It's, nobody knew what, certainly somebody knew, but
yeah,
it was just a small train rolling along.
Yeah. And speaking of Disney Plus, I'm sure, I assume you guys watched it. Like, how did you react to that revelation that there was this black super soldier the whole time? Did it add up in your minds, or like in your screenwriter minds when you retrace the history of it all?
Well, listen, you might imagine, like, we inhaled all the Cap comics, so we're very aware of the Elijah Bradley story, right? And there wasn't room for our storytelling to do it. But I think I remember when I spoke to Malcolm Spellman pretty early on, and I said, please tell me you're doing something with that story. I think, was it Red, White, and Truth or something, or Red, White, and Blue?
It's called Truth.
It's just called Truth. Yeah. So he kind of snickered and said, yeah, oh yeah. So I was always eagerly anticipating how they were going to, because there's a lot a lot to do there, right? It's the first Black Captain America. There's a certain story that you're going to have to address, and so I knew Malcolm was going to go there. I didn't know he'd go there that well. It lands nicely.
Yeah, it was great, and that was from my discussions with him doing this. That was the plot point he was most excited about.
Yeah,
I talked to him early on. He's like, "There's something that happens in episode 2 and episode 5. These are my favorite moments. You'll see. You'll know when it happens." Like, that was like the thing he was most excited about.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's so good. Always one of my favorite questions to ask you guys. How would you say that the script for First Avenger changed most dramatically from your first draft to what we saw on the screen?
First draft, we had some pretty crazy outlines, if I remember, but
I don't even.
Draft wise, I'm trying to think. There are a lot of little things that I remember. There was a huge Hydra robot.
Oh yeah.
That Cap. It's a large chunk of the third act was Cap fighting this big robot.
Panzer Max.
Yes.
Yeah. Panzer Max.
It played in, like, oh, he was alongside Red Skull.
No, it was all part of
He belonged to the Red Skull.
The castle, right?
Yeah.
And so we ended up. It's a very simple act 3 now, right? It's basically we have a problem. What are we going to do? We're going to knock on the front door. We knock on the front door, and then we fight, and the plane gets away. And we certainly had more complicated versions of it, but always pulpy. It's one of the great. What I'm very proud of the Cap franchise is those feel like they feel connected, but they feel like they're from 3 different genres or 3 different eras, right? Like, and so the touchstones for the first Cap are going to be, sort of pulpy 40s movies,
which is also one of Joe Johnston's sweet spots. Like, he loves that, and he's so good at it that, like, he would come in and go, like, I think he brought up Panzer Max for the.
Oh, I think it was baby.
Gotta fight us. I found this in the comic book.
No,
it's a giant super robot, Nazi super robot.
5 Graves to Cairo.
So, but I think eventually it was a budget and time thing where it was like, we really can't be spending that much time.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of his car. Yes. Oh, the Red Skull's car.
Yeah.
She exists still somewhere. Can't think of massive changes. I mean, we rewrote it 1,000 times. But the basic layout of it was generally the same. It always had a long act 1.
Mm-hmm. Right. We had learned that, and I think it was basically we would keep pointing to Iron Man, where he doesn't really get out of the cave until minute 40. And that Favreau really took a long time for you to like him and gave you lots of ups and downs, So we felt, and Kevin gave us the room, like, you really need to fall in love with scrawny Steve Rogers before he gets all capped. And so that was the mission of the first act of the movie.
I know Kevin has said the original plan was maybe to set half the film in present day. I mean, was that represented in the
by the time we got on board, that had been thrown out.
That's scrapped.
Yeah, and that's part of part of Kevin sort of gaining confidence and leverage with the powers that be. Remember, he's got to deal with New York Marvel and all that kind of stuff. So I think a lot of people at first blush go, well, we can't make a period movie. We'll lose our shirts. Mm-hmm. So it's a little period, and then he'll come to the present day. And then I think they may have had a script before us, like, where they try that, and they just had 2 halves of 2 different movies, right? Yeah. So I think Kevin at one point, I don't know how he got other people on board, he said it's got to be the actual origin story. It's all in the 40s. Yeah. Let's own it. And that
imagine one of the beautiful things about the way the MCU has worked is that in success, it allows for stranger things to be made that are bolstered by the fact that they're connected to these big successful pillars. Mm-hmm. If you were making a freestanding Cap movie, I think there'd be a lot more pressure to put it in present day. But because they'd had a hit with Iron Man, you could say, we're going to make a period movie, but he's going to catch up to the big hit. And then he'll be part of that. This rocket that is traveling is starting to pull the other things with it, so that 10 years later you can make a show about a hallucinating magic woman and a dead robot, and people will go, it fits perfect, great.
It all fits. I love it. I believe there was also an original plan to have a couple X-Men in there. Were they ever in the script?
No.
Not on our watch, I don't think.
I mean, they were so far off from having the clout to knock on Fox's door at that point that I don't imagine they ever thought they could actually get any of those guys.
Well, yeah, Wolverine and Magneto were the 2 I always heard.
Oh, there's basically no way that ever could have happened.
Yeah, I can see where they'd fit in the comic canon, but
Yeah, the film was being developed in the mid-aughts. The U.S. Just in terms of the sort of socio-political climate, U.S. is still deeply engaged militarily, right, in the Middle East. George W. Bush is facing accusations of lying over WMDs that got us there. I mean, it was so heavy on our minds that at the time Kevin Feige was being asked if he was like worried about anti-American sentiment, affecting the film's global reach. You guys were brought on right around the time of like the 2008 election. I mean, do you ever remember that being a concern on your side?
Only theoretically, of people going, are people in, pick your country, are people in Italy going to go see Captain America? Are they going to go, we've had enough of America? To the point where in a lot of foreign territories, it was called Captain America, the First Avenger, in order to.
Well, it's called, that's the thing, because you're right. It's called that here, but they did that very much on purpose. They had that hyphen title with the idea that every country could decide which was the title and then which was the subtitle. And I believe only 3 countries took them up on flipping it. But I certainly think people were aware that it may not be a great selling point. Yeah.
But I think, happily, it quickly became apparent that almost as it is in the comics, people, people don't link Cap with the country, with the government. He's the theoretical spirit of America, which everybody can agree was probably a good idea.
Right. And also punching Nazis. Like, we can all unite around Nazis.
You would think, Kevin.
Sure. That's okay. Maybe
maybe we should put this movie back out now.
Well, we must hit on the most important issue with this movie. Did you guys at least ever talk about Cap losing his virginity?
I think he loses his virginity. Why do people think he's a virgin?
There is
see him on the USO tour. Good Lord!
In First Avenger.
I think if you look like that and you're going city to city and you're signing autographs for the likes of the ladies that he's signing the autographs for, I got to imagine that.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing to remember is Steve Rogers isn't a prude. He may be occasionally presented that way, but he's a guy who believes in right and wrong and all these things, but he's not a choir boy. He's a World War II veteran. That's right. These things came up. So, obviously he wouldn't do anything untoward. It would all be, yes, it would be out of wedlock, but, I don't think it's necessarily a mandate that he's as pure as the driven snow.
Yeah. I'm just telling it. You guys said it. It's canon now. He lost his virginity on the US.
And I'm going to say it right now. We shot it. We filmed it. We have it. No.
I mean, I've seen theories that he never actually had sex, or at least, I mean, come on, at least until he stays in the past with Peggy. I mean,
he does complain though that it's not his first kiss since 1945. He's 100. He's not dead or whatever.
You can make arguments at several points along the franchise.
Raiders was a big influence on you guys. Whatever. Was that the influence? What can you say about that?
One of them. I mean, certainly stylistically, obviously Joe had worked on Raiders, so it was like having
God, it's great. You could just sketch stuff out and you go, oh yeah, you probably did that for the truck chase, didn't you? That's awesome.
Or it's like you'd go like, is this gonna work? And then you remember that he did the truck chase, and you're like, it should work fine. But it was all, you're dealing in the same world where you're dealing with Nazis and mystical things, and it's like, well, we either nod to it or pretend we're not doing it but do it anyway, which is you're just going to get nailed for that. So
it's partly why Johann Schmidt at the beginning kind of says, and the Fuhrer digs in the
digs for trinkets in the desert.
That's right.
I think I'm trying to think of other touchstones. I know when we were trying to think of someone who's upright, again, going back to Cap's morality, but not a Boy Scout, we talked about the Untouchables a lot, where Elliot Ness is enforcing this because it's right and it's the law, but he still goes for a drink at the end of the movie. You know, that is a guy you get behind, even though he could be accused of not being cool.
Right.
Superman
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Christopher Reeve performance is amazing. Yeah, and then as I said, things World War II movies. You know, I don't remember who directed it, but it was Billy Wilder's script called Five Graves of Cairo. I think it's Billy Wilder's script. And then I just watch Casablanca every year just to watch it. And then we did a lot of homework on World War II, just in sort of. We read the whose biography was it, Chris? Tell him back. Audie Murphy's, the Audie Murphy biography. Right, who killed a lot of people.
Bonkers.
Yeah, became a movie star, and just sort of try to figure out where, because my history education stopped probably at the Revolutionary War, so I had to sort of figure out, when were we in Italy, that kind of stuff.
How much had you guys been tasked with setting up the events of the Avengers, if at all? I mean, it would release a year later, right? And how much did you guys know about it at the time?
The only thing I can recall talking about was there was, at a certain point, they wanted to end it on the deck of the helicarrier, whereas instead of running out into Times Square, they wanted him to bust out and find out he was on the deck of the helicarrier with Nick Fury. And that was about.
Well, we knew they had to go in the ice. I mean, so the macro was, we knew he had to go in the ice at the end.
Yeah.
So come out, so it gave us actually, the fact that they were so ambitious gave us structure, right? We knew that he had to kind of be a war hero. Meant you had telescope time. It's kind of why you have the montage in the middle there, and that he had to end his career and go into the ice so that he could be in that movie. So it we like tennis with a net, like it helps us to have a few of those things to work towards.
And from what I understand, Joss Whedon did some tweaks on it in the lead up. Can you talk about that at all?
Oh, on our draft? Yeah, he probably did. Yeah, there's a couple lines there, his for sure.
They wanted him to get his feet wet with all the characters so that when he did do Avengers, it was, cohesive. He wound up having a fairly different take on Cap than we did, but he dipped in and then we came back and.
We did about 2 years on it, and he did about 2 weeks on it. That's sort of the ratio.
How good did that last line feel on paper? Because it obviously ultimately became pretty iconic. I had a date.
Oh, I had a date. Yeah, it doesn't. The ending. Yeah, I don't have an emotional attachment to the Times Square scene. I have an emotional attachment to the Peggy and the going down radio scene. That's for me the end of the movie in many ways. And then the next chunk is, here's how we get to the Avengers.
I mean, that was the one, because it was the helicarrier for a long time. So I think his reaction, what he was reacting to, was radically different. I mean, he was in the sky on a flying battleship. So,
right.
Nick Fury may have even had the last line. I think for a while it was like, a lot's changed or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that radio conversation.
Yeah, that's not. It's not. Yeah, we never know what's going to be iconic, so it's not like we don't. We don't put that on the board and go, "I'll be talking about that one."
This is the line underlined in the script. But I mean, it is these days. It's like, I think it's considered like one of the single most heartbreaking lines in the MCU. And also, I was going to ask if that sort of made, Endgame more cathartic for you guys.
Oh well, the opportunity to take him back to the, for him to get his dance, was probably top of mind when we said yes to Infinity War and Endgame.
Well, also when because. We had no concept of time travel or there was going to be anything about that for a long time. It was the when in discussions of it, the idea of time travel came up. Was, oh, not only could they fix the 50% of the universe has been killed and all that, but Steve could go back and have his dance.
Right. Well, I say that, Chris, because
why we ran for it.
Well, one of them, again, as I said, like Kevin doesn't really, give you, here's all the 17 things you got to do. You got to get him in the ice at the end of Cap. For Endgame, for Infinity War and Endgame, it was, let's say goodbye to the characters. Like, so that, as much as makes sense. And so the idea that Steve could put his shield down, we didn't know how to do it, but we knew that it'd be great if he could do it. And then when time travel came up, we went, oh, now we know. Now we know what's
also, there'd been this, Peggy had been a through line through all the movies and the Agent Carter show. So, she's an old woman in Winter Soldier. She dies in Civil War, and then to go back, loop it back to the beginning is just, when do you ever get that opportunity, to make that many movies that you can get around back to the beginning again and have it pay off?
Obviously, Steve Rogers would inevitably evolve over the course of a decade and however many film appearances, at least 7. How do you look back at it sort of like, just looking back at that character now, 10 years later, do you see those, obviously you guys formed his essence in that film. How do you see him sort of then versus how he ultimately, wrapped up his story in Endgame?
I guess I think he matured in a way that not many characters get to do on screen. He got to make sort of informed personal growth decisions over the course of blockbuster movies, which seems weird to say, but like I think psychologically he's pretty healthy and healthier by the end.
What's interesting is I think they're mostly healthy decisions, but he makes increasingly, I don't want to say selfish, but
they're self-interested. But again, being a healthy person sometimes means doing what's right for you.
Yeah, like Skinny Steve. He is doing these things for himself. He wants to be fulfilled, but he never admitted, and he probably didn't even know it. That he wants to be of value. I don't want to be a worthless person. I'm going to fight really hard so I can.
Right. Well, Bucky calls him on that, right? Bucky says, "Yeah, because you got nothing to prove." And it's just a little, thing.
It's incredibly satisfying to look back on it as a whole, as something with a beginning, middle, and an end. Mm-hmm. It does feel, how often you get something with a beginning and an end. Like, a character, it feels like you wrote a series of books or a TV show that,
the end of the plane
did really well. Like it, it's more, I'd say it's more satisfying than any one movie is that, like, there is this trackable life till he's 100-something years old that is there and works pretty damn well.
Sure did. Finally, we're not only 10 years removed from Cap 1, but 2 years removed from you guys wrapping up Endgame. Amazingly, it's been 2 years.
It came out in 19, Kevin.
And they haven't been real years. These are like
they haven't counted actually. But what have you guys been working on since? I think you've been pretty busy. I know that's probably a multi-part question, but give me the things you're excited about.
Well, we started a studio with the Russo brothers, so that Agbo has been working pretty steadily even through the pandemic. So the company is just finishing shooting a movie called The Gray Man, which we helped out with, but the Russo brothers are directing that right now. And that's sort of a big spy thriller. We're going to start shooting a movie for Universal that Chris and I wrote called The Electric State early next year. And that's been a lot of fun work. That's sort of what would you call it, Chris? A girl and a robot post-apocalyptic movie.
Yeah, it's an interesting pop spin on robots and it's hard to describe in a way that makes me happy, in that it doesn't completely slot 100% into a genre, but it kind of plays with several that you're familiar with. And we also have written a script that is, I think, soon to be made, based on the Cambridge Analytica scandal from a couple of years ago, which has been great to dip back into true stories and political storytelling that we've done before, that is really timely and exercises some different muscles that maybe we weren't always able to flex in Marvel. Not that I felt impinged in any way by them, but
yeah,
that's a very exciting thing.
I hope we get to talk for every one of those, because I always love talking to you guys. And you thought you were done with me with Marvel
one day.
No, it's Kevin. It's why I know where you live. That's fine.
All right, guys. I appreciate your time as always. Thank you so much for all the insights.
Of course. Thanks,
Thank you, man.